Hello and welcome to the President's Podcast, right here on the record with the Ohio Senate. The views the news excludes. I'm John Fortney, the Director of Communication with the Senate Republican Caucus, the Majority Caucus in the Ohio Senate. Coming to you this week, and we're very grateful for the space and the production facility from the Ohio Channel because it is a huge week. It is called the Governor's State of the State Address. And we are here with two people, if you watch the podcast, you're very familiar with. Current Senate President Rob McColley, a Republican from Napoleon, Ohio, and past Senate President, current Speaker of the House, Matt Huffman, a Republican from Lima, Ohio. Great to have both of you back on.
Thanks to be here.
Governor said the state of the state is strong. You agree?
I would agree with that. I think, we've made incremental improvements in the state of Ohio over the past 10 years or so that have led to many of the wins that we're beginning to see from an economic development standpoint. Generally speaking, I think things are going pretty well in Ohio. It's not to say that the work is done, but I would agree that the state of the state is strong.
Speaker Huffman.
Yeah, no, I agree also. Things don't usually get better because there's one bill gets passed. I mean, the things that have been done, President McColley mentioned the lowering of the income tax over a period of years. Things that Governor Kasich did with the business income deduction, but certainly a number of the pro-development things that this Governor DeWine, has done. Would say with the help of former Lieutenant Governor Husted, including the mega projects legislation 4 years ago, which was instituted or initiated by Governor DeWine and his folks. So, I think Ohio's in very strong position. We have to, of course, look and see, are the things we're going to want to pay for in this budget, is it sustainable? I know we only make decisions in 2-year increments, but somebody else will be here 2 and 4 and 6 years from now who you need to see how those things get paid for.
Yeah, speaking of economic development, the governor talked about Site Selection magazine ranking Ohio #1 for site selection across the country and the lowest, as you said, income tax rate in Ohio in 50 years. There has been some discussion, as we always do during the 2-year budget process, of 10 years ago, there were 9 tax brackets in Ohio. Now there are only 2. What's the discussion like, without giving away any inside baseball information, but is there a significant effort or discussion about getting down to a single bracket maybe?
Well, I think there is a significant discussion. I think someone has to have a specific plan, and which means, well, how is the revenue to the state going to lower? How that will affect the behavior of individuals? Will people come here because we have one single bracket? As I've mentioned a variety of times, business income deduction under $300,000 is taxed at 0 right now. So that won't affect those individuals. But certainly a lower tax rate of all kind will. But I think it has to be a substantial sea change in order to see real change in behavior.
The governor talked about the new lieutenant governor, Jim Tressel, who is very familiar with playbooks and play calling, putting him in charge of Ohio's workforce playbook and making it a region by region type of play calling. Does that make sense to you?
I think it does, and this is something that Lieutenant Governor Tressel has spent a lot of time in his post-coaching career on, is higher education, workforce development, how those things interplay with each other. And even before he became lieutenant governor, he was having conversations about what we can do to better improve that stuff. And I think he has a unique perspective, obviously having run a university as its president. He understands the good and the bad of the system, and also probably has some very good ideas as to how it can be reformed for the betterment of Ohio.
Speaker Huffman, what do you think about that? Because, when you have new investment coming in, you have to have the workforce to fill the jobs.
Yeah, I think Jim has had, I mentioned on our press conference, he has a different view on how colleges can help. He told the story about the NCAA changing the rules, and athletes had to take certain classes and they could not take things like industrial technology and things like that were looked upon, at least by the NCAA, as too mundane. I think having that kind of experience in higher education certainly would have learned a lot about this as a football coach, but 10 years in higher education, he's pretty uniquely situated to be able to address those issues.
One of the things, too, the governor talked a little bit about putting some extra energy behind Ohio's economy. That's something that both the House chamber and the Senate chamber are working on. He was talking about but the budget makes it easier to provide power to businesses. And that is part of the all-encompassing 21st century energy plan that both chambers are looking at right now. In the Senate, it is Senate Bill 2. Where do the negotiations stand? I guess at a foundational level, we're talking about being able to generate more baseload power.
Yes, and this is something that I think Ohio is ideally situated to capitalize off this, while other states coming out of the Biden administration, where frankly there were federal government policies that screwed up the entire electric generation markets and really made it difficult to go in and build more baseload power. We now have a new administration that has a much more open mind to it. Ohio is ideally suited to capitalize off of this, and so I would expect that both chambers, I'm told, are going to vote on their respective proposals here pretty soon. I know that there's been some regular communication between the sponsors of both bills to keep up to speed on what the other chamber is doing. So hopefully we'll see something here in the next couple months pass through both chambers.
Important to produce energy here at home.
Well, I think producing it here at home, but do it in a way, again, that's sustainable. And so we're not going to have utility companies competing against independent energy producers. And because essentially that's the government competing against independent energy producers, we have a system where ratepayers have to pay what the PUCO says. So that's one part. The other part is as these bills talk about, is allowing these massive energy users to build, as we say, behind the meter. They can build their own power plant and not drain from the system that heats our homes and does all of the other things. That is really what 99% of Ohioans care about. Sure, they'd love to have giant data centers, but not if it means it doubles their electricity bill.
Right. Do you think we're well positioned for natural gas generation here in Ohio?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody knows about what we're able to do, and especially in eastern Ohio. I think part of the issue is delivering that gas to the electric generation plant. So I think you'll see some of those plants created there, but if we're going to have on-site generation for mega energy users, we've got to figure out how to get a gas pipeline there.
One of the interesting things, too, it's always good to see the recognition of a program that really one of our senators worked very hard on, Senator Andrew Brenner, and that was an effort that was not all that popular. You can imagine, especially with school kids, with the students. But the governor acknowledged requiring schools to have a policy that is now law that addresses the use of smartphones in class. And then he even went a step further and said the General Assembly should now take that one step further and ban them altogether. What was your perception of that? Because that was a bit of a controversial issue about, well, how do I reach my student and what are we taking away exactly?
Well, I think there is a immediate response, and this is probably for all individuals and institutions, that if you're going to make me do something, I don't like it, or there's going to be some negative consequence, or how will we pay for it, things like that. And but I think in this case, there were as many schools, if not more, saying, please make us do this because this has gotten out of control for us. And so I really appreciate what the governor said, which is this needs to be system-wide. All of the schools need to do this. Not that I don't care what kids think, but kids make bad decisions. That's why they're in school, learning to make good decisions. And the adults should be in charge, not the kids.
Senator McColley.
Yeah, I think we need to react to this and acknowledge that we've had probably the better part of a decade or more where students have been able to have their phones in their pockets the entire time. It's basically a computer that they have in their pocket at any given time. There's well-documented research out there documenting how distracting and how addicting some of the activities on the phones are. And so it's probably worthy of a discussion to see what we can do and what the research would say about if we just eliminated them.
The governor also recognized your efforts in establishing, along with Senator Serino, the Centers of Civics and Government at the different colleges and universities around Ohio. There are how many of them? 5?
5. And
they've been very well received, and that was also quite a battle as well to get that passed. It was passed as part of the budget, but at a baseline, what are they designed to do?
Well, they're designed to really just get back to the basics and insulate these discussions about our government and our society, insulate them from what we've seen at higher education institutions that really have been captured from within, in some cases, by the bureaucracy and by the overwhelming faculty influence on everything that happens at the university, from the approval of curriculum all the way down through the administration of the university. And so these were meant to be kind of siloed off from that and really give a place for students to be able to engage in thoughtful conversation and debate, and feel like, hey, this is a place where this is encouraged and we can learn more about what makes our country great without having outside influences in inserting themselves into the process.
Yeah, Speaker Huffman, you're both lawyers, and if you don't have law students who can actually argue the points on either side of the issue because there's a cancel culture out there or somebody's offended, then we're not producing the lawyers we should be producing in Ohio.
Well, not just lawyers, John, but also other active minds who are willing to challenge the status quo. I think it's important for legislators, it's important for voters, it's important for members of the media to be able to ask difficult questions and know that there's not going to be some ramification. And when you stifle those kinds of conversations, you don't have growth. You end up kind of having a closed society that doesn't listen to new ideas. So I think these centers are a great idea, and we'll see in a couple of years how that goes. And I think the other changes too that are coming in higher education with Senate Bill 1 and the things that Jerry's been working on for a few years.
Yeah, where does that stand right now? We passed it out of the Senate. It is now in the House with hearings. There is a companion bill in the House as well. This almost got across the finish line in the last General Assembly. Do you expect it to finally make it to the floor, maybe?
I do. I think it's going to be very short order, frankly. Representative Tom Young is managing the process for the House. He's chairman of the committee. If there's folks in our caucus who are against it, they're not very much against it. There are probably a couple of factors in it. So I expect Senate Bill 1 to come out of the House fairly quickly.
I thought it was interesting to hear the governor today, also during the State of the State address, when he was talking about higher education, making the suggestion that results matter and that the amount of funding that goes to higher ed should be tied at least partially to results in 2 areas. One, how many kids are graduating, how many students are graduating, and are they working in their career field? Worthy of consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when I talk to higher education institutions, the focus of my message to them is we need to have a better value proposition in higher education. And many universities are embracing this insofar as you're seeing them shift faculty to the in-demand career fields, the in-demand majors, the things that they know are going to contribute to well-paying jobs for the students after the time they spend at that university. But this is also something that we should be focused on behalf of really just good public policy for the taxpayers of the state of Ohio and for the students who are attending these universities.
What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that the graduation rate is very important. There's a lot of tragic economic stories about kids who stayed in school for 2 or 3 or 4 years. They're deeply in debt, don't have a degree, and it has all of these other domino societal effects. The concern I have about we're going to tie college support to the amount of money that someone's making is that there are a lot of we don't just have 4-year institutions so that people can make more money. And there are a lot of folks who go into rural Ohio, for example, and become a teacher. They're not making as much money as a teacher in another district. Well, I don't think that means that the university did a bad job. And so we don't want to discourage people from taking jobs especially in places where it's difficult to make a lot of money. So that part of it, I'm wondering how it will work. I think that the real issue, certainly we have these DEI issues that we've discussed. The real issue is your university paying for infrastructure, either physical or in terms of human resources, that really is not producing anything, whether it's a graduate in a low-paying job or a high-paying job.
One of the things, too, that they were asked during the post-State of the State address reacts, both the Republican and Democratic caucuses give reaction to the governor's State of the State address. One of the final questions during the post-session, we call it gaggle, with reporters was, what are we doing about property taxes in this state? Certainly it is something that both chambers have been working very hard on, multiple pieces of legislation out there, but yet a very, very complex problem, especially when there are ways to basically raise money that the voters don't vote on. In just a nutshell, where do things stand on that?
Yeah, one of these topics that don't fit unless it's a giant nut of some kind in any nutshell. But I think, and Senator President McColley talked about this in the gaggle, that this has been a series of missteps, not missteps. In the moment, it seemed like a good idea. A lot of it were passed by the entity, or advocated for and passed by legislators by the entities who were receiving the money. So, when you ask the average voter, what's the difference between a levy, a replacement levy, a renewal, and an emergency levy? And the answer is nobody really knows.
And you're paying for all of them.
Well, in different ways, and it's applied differently. So you ask these two fundamental questions, and you're going to get these answers. Are you for your schools, your parks, your firefighters, whoever it is? Yes. Do you want to pay more in taxes? No. But that often meets at the ballot box, and some 50+% of people vote for it. And how that all works out, we find out later that we have the problem that we have now. So, like the fact that this was created with different pieces of legislation over a year, we're going to have to unpeel the onion one layer at a time, and that's what we're doing with some of the bills in the House.
President McColley, final thought from you on that.
Well, I would say that over the course of the last 3 or 4 decades, rather than trying to fix the system, we've fixed individual issues, and often within the system that has often resulted in making the problem in some cases potentially worse. And so really the system, when it was conceived and when it was put in place, was with property taxes, was meant to be largely anti-inflationary. Over the course of time, through various changes to the law, it's become very inflationary and even more difficult to understand. And so it's worthy of a conversation. I know our caucus feels pretty strongly that we need to take a serious look at reforming the system, if for no other reason than making it more accountable and transparent and easier to understand for the voters.
Ohio Senate President Rob McColley, Ohio Speaker of the House of Representatives Matt Huffman, thanks very much for your time. Great to see you both.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.